Are we ready to go?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Dipchand Ramchritar, and I'm the Outreach and Development Coordinator at Voice of Men 360. I am joining in my esteemed colleagues. This roundtable discussion is to recognize the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Men and Boys, which we observe on January 31st. This is our fourth year's observance. This observance is live on Facebook and YouTube, so please join us and share your comments, inputs, and views. Facebook, it's at Voice of Men 360 page/group. YouTube, Voice of Men 360. This year's theme is creating nonviolent spaces. Thank you, Dr. Jerome Tilson, for appointing Voice of Men 360 as the Canadian coordinator for the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Men and Boys. Indeed, it's a great honor to be the Canadian voice. Yes, Voice of Men 360, we will take this opportunity very seriously, give high priority to this movement, and we will do whatever we can through this platform. Let me share a few details about our organization, and then I'll hand it over to Linda. Voice of Men 360 is a non-profit organization founded in 2020 and based in Toronto, Canada. Voice of Men 360 was born out of seeing tremendous need and stepping up to provide services to help, support, and overcome men and boys' life challenges. We are part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day has been serving in over 21 countries and 21 years, and so far 90 countries around the world joined together and doing various activities regularly. International Men's Day follows six pillars, which is the overall well-being of men and boys. We follow in the same footsteps. And now I hand you over to my esteemed colleague, Linda.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. My name is Linda Tilson, and I am an empowerment coach and IMD, or International Men's Day USA coordinator. And recently I just started a show called The Men's Room. And why I did that was because I felt it was important that men had a space where they could be vulnerable and open up and talk about the issues that matter to them most. Before we start our discussion, I'd like us to share the disclaimer. We would like to remind you that the Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith toward peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not necessarily represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums such as these to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. And this is the moment where we will be getting to meet all of our panelists for today's session. And what I wanted to do was to be able to thank some of our partners and sponsors. And so I'm going to go ahead and be doing that now. And be with you in just. So the organizations that I wanted to give a shout out to, and many of our panelists are on these organizations, are doing work for these organizations. And so we have International Men's Day, International Men's Day Malaysia, All Bengal Men's Forum, Camera Youth, German Bangladesh Help for Man, Boys Mentoring Advocacy Network, Domestic Abuse and Violence International Alliance, White Ribbon Campaign Nambia, Men of the North, Spark Life International, Paving the Way Foundation, and Men. And so without further ado, we're going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves and give a little bit of their background and experience and why they're here today. Why is today so important to be entering into this conversation? And so Dr. Suri, will you go ahead and kick us off? And you're on mute.
All right. Thank you very much, Linda. All right. So I am Dr. Suri Charles. I am an education and development interventionist specialist. I'm also a clinical child and behavioral psychologist. My doctoral research and dissertation were on juvenile delinquencies, the impact of childhood neglect and PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. I am a mother of 2 young men, adult men. So raising boys is very important for me to, make sure that my boys understand, what it's like to be men and how to be a good man, man of honor, and for their husband to be a husband and father and all of that. So and I also believe that in terms of family and communities, it's always a partnership between man and woman. It's not so much about just one particular gender. So we all should be together, hand in hand, for the betterment of our communities and families. So that's why I'm here. I want to talk about these issues as well.
Thank you. We're glad to have you. Next, we'll hear from Christopher.
Good morning. My name is Christopher Merasty. I'm the president and founder of the Men in the North program, a nonprofit organization that was started January 2020. We've been going now just over 3 years, and things have been going, I would say, successful. We've now expanded to an area in the mining sectors for Cameco Corporation. We have a program going on there right at the mine sites, right at the workforce, and as well as within the tri-community of Lac La Ronge. We might be also expanding over to the Prince Albert, Saskatchewan Penitentiary with our program, and as well as the Besnard Lake Correctional Facility with our program as well. We've also had not only a successful mental health support program for both the community and within the workforce, but also offering other opportunities such as youth mentoring, elder support, land-based activities, entertainment, and health and wellness. We've also been approached by many communities to look at introducing our program within their communities as well. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Next, we will have Edward.
Hello, everybody. My name is Edward Bartlett of the DAVIA, which means Domestic Abuse and Violence International Alliance. DAVIA currently has 70 organizations, member organizations, located in 25 countries around the world, in every continent except for Antarctica. So we have members in Europe, Latin America, Africa, Asia, Australia, and North America. So DAVIA is working hard for, number one, for domestic violence policies that are science-based. Secondly, we want domestic violence policies that are family friendly and family supportive. And thirdly, we want domestic violence policies that are inclusive of all, including men. And so I'm delighted to be here with everybody. Look forward to the conversation.
We're very happy to have you. Next, we're going to hear from Anirban.
Hi, good morning and to everyone. I'm Anirban Sinha. I'm basically from India, and I'm an entrepreneur for the last 5 years, working with an organization called All Bengal Men's Forum, and we are fighting for men's rights and boy child for the last 5 years. I'm working over here as a secretary with the organization. I pretty know Shivam, and I have someone over here who is a big inspiration for all of us, like Edward. I know him pretty well because he has been working for the men and boys at this particular age a lot, and he made it possible of getting at least so many organizations together. So we had Shivam in the earliest stage who was doing the same, and now we have Edward as well from Davia who are doing the same thing. So it's a big opportunity and an honor to be a part of this particular, I should say, not a meeting, but uh, I would say it like a picnic, kind of a picnic, wherein I have some leisure time being spoken out and to know new people, and really appreciate everyone who is working, and there are many speakers, so I'll just wait for my turn, and that's all. Good luck, and long live the revolution, long live the men and boy child. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, what I would say is, I see what we're doing today is really a worldwide community conversation. So, we're from different cultures, different places around the world, and we're coming together for a united topic. And that's about bringing in what men and boys need for support and services, and how they need to be seen and heard. And it's not just something that's a good to have, it's something we must have. And that's where I'm coming from, and that's why I'm involved in this work, is because, as Dr. Suri had mentioned, it's not necessarily a gender issue, it's a humanitarian issue, and so we can't leave anybody out. And so I'm just excited to be a part of this conversation today. With that, what I thought we would do to start off this community conversation is to ask a question, and each of
Sorry,
you have an
Linda.
opportunity to answer. And if somebody says something that's really exciting and sparks something, I don't want anyone to have to think that they can't join back into the conversation. So I want it to be fluid and flowing and really engaging. And so I think we can do that. Yes, we're a big number to facilitate, but that's how I see today happening. So with that, the first question I want to ask is,
Linda,
yes.
there are two people who still needs to be introduced to.
Did I forget to introduce somebody?
Zenly.
Oh, did I forget you, Zenly? I am so sorry. Thank you for speaking up.
Sorry.
We will go back to that. Okay, yes, thank you.
Oh, all right. Hi. Yes. Good evening here from the Philippines. And before I introduce myself, I would love to take this opportunity for having me here. It means the world to me, and it's actually a big help for me, to be part of this roundtable discussion. So I'm here from the Philippines. I'm an HIV or sexual health coach. I'm also a life coach here in the Philippines, and um, I founded the Men's Coach Philippines. Basically, I am building it for Filipino boys and men, for as a support group, and encourage is I aim it to provide a safe space for boys and men, and to deal and to help to deal with their personal life crises and life issues, and of course, to all abuse survivor and abuse and survivor of domestic abuse, which is really it's not actually a, a conversation here in the Philippines or anywhere in the world. And basically, is my mission is to really empower all. Of course, I'll start in Filipino boys and men, and hopefully, globally to empower all of men that they are important and they really matter in the society. And the reason I'm part of this commitment, because there's a very a close to my heart who is a survivor of domestic abuse. So I witness and I witness the struggle and pain that no help, or it's very limited resources and support to all men. So that's why I decided to create my own support group for men. So I started doing it in actually in Twitter. So that was in the height of the pandemic. So that was May 2020. So I tried to reach out for help here, but no one is really helping. So I just decided to do my own research. What can I do for this friend of mine to help him? um how to really help him recover from the abuse, and of course the he's also an alienated father, so I have to research and talk to all different like psychologists, doctors and lawyers as well, because there's a lot of like things going on that I am not aware of. So yeah, so that's my mission, and that's why I'm very happy that I finally met the right people that I can share my experience and to be part of this um, lifetime commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. And really, listening to what you have said, it's about jumping in, seeing a need and jumping in and going for it. And so that's why we're all here. And so I recognize, and I'm sure everyone on this call feels the same way. We've all seen a need in one way or another, and we're leading efforts and we're inviting people to jump on and join us. And so, the next question, or the question that we're going to open with, really is going to kick off that sentiment. And it's, how can we engage men and boys in the fight against abuse and promote healthy masculinity and healthy femininity? And so how do we do that? Now I'm saying engage men and boys, but it's us advocates out there that are a lot of times doing the engaging. So what does that look like?
Can I go first?
Yes, go right ahead.
I think first and foremost, in order to to get anybody engaged in a discussion or a conversation, is to first and foremost is to actually we need to have sympathize. We need to sympathize, and we need to be genuine about it, and we also need to have empathy. And we also have to show compassion. And once we show that we truly care and we want to talk about this, regardless of gender, I think people will be more open about it, and people will be less defensive about it. And only then we can actually get them to be engaged. We want them to understand that abuse knows no gender. There's no socioeconomic class, there's no educational background, there's no family structure. It just can happen to anyone, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're a child or adult. It does not discriminate. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It happens across all genders, race, ethnic backgrounds. Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Canada, everywhere, and at every economic levels. And I think if we address, we genuinely and sincerely talk about all of that, people will be more open, and they will be more willing to actually engage and talk about these issues without being so defensive.
Does anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. So Davia is more of a focus. First of all, we strongly support activities at the local level to provide support to men in this arena. Our focus is more on the policy, and we focus on we look at what people call the narrative. The narrative tends to be very one-sided. The narrative tends to only focus on domestic violence against women. And I'll just give one example. In Europe, there's actually right now there's a proposed law called the Istanbul Convention. The Istanbul Convention never once mentions domestic violence against men and boys. It's all about domestic violence against women and girls. That's just obviously one-sided, inaccurate, and unfair. So part of our work is to change the narrative, is to when media accounts talk about domestic violence, they should always talk about this as the full range of victims. When lawmakers talk about domestic violence, they should always be cognizant and highlight that this affects men and boys. And in fact, a number of studies have found men and boys are more likely to be victims of domestic violence than girls and women. So that's a major part of our focus, is the policy focus.
I agree with you, Edward, and I think the issue here is also because men, they were raised to, boys were raised not to cry. You got to toughen up, you got to be man, and you don't talk about these things, and it makes them feel like they're less of a man if they talk about being abused or in a lot of ways. So I think that also makes it very difficult for, I think it makes it unaware. People are unaware of it because men do not talk about it. Because if they do, they would, I think it's more about like, if they would think about like, okay, if I'm going to say something, who would believe me? It's not about a matter of where do I go or who do I go to. It's about, will people believe me? I'm a man. Will people believe me? So I think that's the thing here, that people just, men in general did not want to talk about it because they've been mocked, they've been laughed at, they've been, discrimination is one thing, but just imagine being a man and you're being laughed at, being abused or being beat up by women. It's like, hello, you're a man, So they don't want to talk about this, and I understand that it's painful, it's hurtful, it's embarrassing. I think we need. That's why I want to be up here and I want to say, hey, man, it's okay. We can talk about it. I hear you. I feel your pain. Let's not keep it to yourself. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to be in pain alone. We are all in this together, man or woman. We are human. It's humanity. There's no gender in humanity. Pain, suffering, everybody feels it. So it's okay. It will not make you be less of a man. We want to help. We want to talk about it. But the only way for us to actually talk to help you and offer resources and get all of that funding so that you guys can have the same, help that we do. But you need to talk about it. You need to be open. You need to open up.
And I'll just mention, and Suri, I totally agree with your comments, and I appreciate your passion about this, and you're absolutely right. I actually did a media interview Friday night, just 2 days ago, and the interviewer asked me, well, what can we do about this now? What, how can we address these this biased narrative? And my answer was, and I was speaking directly to the male viewers of his interview. I said, men, if you are being abused, for example, if your partner is talking to you in a demeaning or abusive or condescending way, or calling you names, hey, that's abuse. And the appropriate response is not just to keep your mouth shut. The appropriate response is to say something like, dear, that's comes across as abusive, and I'd like you to stop. So part of this is just helping men to recognize. I knew a guy once, his wife actually threw a coffee cup at him. It didn't actually hurt him, right? But he didn't think it was abuse. He just thought of, oh, she threw a coffee cup at me. So part of this is just an abusive situation.
Right, right. And people
Yeah.
always think that abuse is just physical, but there's a lot of form of
Yes.
abuse. It's not just physical. We're
Yeah.
talking about verbal, emotional. Those are all abuse.
Yeah.
And a lot of people not aware of it because they just have this tunnel vision.
Yes.
Okay, abuse. Well, it's physical. I'm not being, I'm not hurt physically. So
Yes.
okay. And as a woman, okay, I'm gonna say this live. As a woman, I know what button I can push. So it's also, therefore, man, yes, you need to say that's not an okay behavior. I do not appreciate that. You just stepping over the line now, and if you feel like you don't want to elevate or make things worse, then it's okay. Just walk away. Just walk away, leave the room, leave the house. It's okay. Come back 2-3 hours later. And that's fine. Because in that way, you're protecting yourself. You are, keeping a safe space. And at the same time, you're not allowing the woman or anybody else to actually do further damage to yourself. So therefore, physical, abuse, there's a lot forms of abuse. And of course, physical is more, visible. But the verbal and emotional abuse is that no one can see it, but the pain, the hurt, it's a lifelong consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Edward and Dr. Suri. Yeah, I mean, for me, by spreading awareness that domestic abuse is not a gender crime, that everyone is really prone to abuse. And by sharing it or spreading awareness like what we're doing right now, they can be aware that, oh, it can happen to me. Or that even their loved one can be really like aware that, oh, um your partner is doing this. I think this is not healthy. This is abuse. And by spreading awareness or doing this kind of conversation, especially now we are now in technology, right? We can now reach different kind of countries, different kind of people. Like men and boys can be vigilant that they can really expose in the such violence. And of course, masculinity should be seen as not toxic, and it's not about their strength. It's not some display of strength. And because, right, there's a lot of like discussion and debate like what is really masculinity, and the social norm and the society taught us or having this kind of I think if you call it seminar or workshop, toxic masculinity. So it's really harmful because like toxic masculinity is a harmful myth, and it's really affecting our boys and men. And I also agree with Dr. Sui that domestic abuse is not only in physical, like the bruises, like they can really see. There's a lot of abuse like emotional abuse, psychological abuse, coercive control, financially abuse. So a lot of people, I believe they don't know it. So they just know that when they heard domestic abuse, oh, it's the victim is a female. They haven't thought that maybe it's the husband or the boyfriend or the other one is the victim. It's not always about the woman, especially of course here in the Philippines as well. It's actually ongoing discussion here in the Philippines too, right? Like in the social media, when the couple, like the celebrity couple, having a what is a relationship breakup, it's always the men, always all the time. Like, or maybe have he abused this partner? It's all the time men. So no one is really talking about that. Or maybe there's really a problem. It's not all about the men all the time. So what about, let's speak up and spread awareness that everyone can be a victim of domestic abuse, and masculinity is not, I mean, masculinity is not toxic. Yes. Thank you.
And if I can just say one more thing about this whole, form of abuse, which a lot of women use it. A lot of women use it by what we call the isolation, which is a common tactic. It kind of like alienate victims from family members and friends. Like women would not allow men to go out, to have hobbies, to go out with their friends, hunting, fishing, and they don't allow that. And some women go to an extent that they do not even allow the husband or the man to go visit their own families. It's always about their own family, but not the man's family. That's also abuse. I mean, it's isolation. That's not right. And men needs to really, I know a lot of men said, you know what, I just want to keep the peace. It's okay if I don't get to see my family. Even if it's once a year, Christmas, you don't get to see your family because the woman is like, no, it's my family, it's my family, it's my family. It's like, no, you have families too. So anytime when you do that, that's also abuse. It's what we call an isolation. And then women, they use threats, they use blackmail, especially when it comes to divorce. And that's why sometimes a lot of men, they would rather stay in a marriage than actually go for separation or divorce, because they want to keep the families together. Because then they would know that, okay, if I do that, if I'm going to go out having a divorce, then that means I may not be able to see my children again, because women, sometimes they will use their kids against these men. It's like they're going to use it as a weapon. So that's blackmailing, that's threatening. It's also abuse. And you guys should not put up with that.
Thank you for bringing that one up there.
Very, very good conversations for sure happening. As a man who lived through abusive relationships, in my past, I had to charge my spouse, which she ended up spending 18 months behind bars due to the physical abuse that I encountered through her. And raising my child at 9 months old, working full time, very, very difficult. And so when she was released, we thought that we would get back and try it again. And it just went from bad to way worse. And so as a man who wanted to be there for the child, it was very difficult. It was very difficult to be in a relationship, a very unhealthy relationship. And it was to the point where the relationship ended with her attacking me with a knife. And my mother just happened to walk through the door at that time. And then that was it. I couldn't handle that anymore, because who knows what would happen next. That might not be here today if I did not take that necessary step to get out of that very unhealthy relationship. And then to go back into that, I found another relationship similar, but it was all more mental abuse, telling me, if you leave me, I'm going to commit suicide. If you leave me, I'm going to phone your boss to get you fired. If you leave me, I'm going to keep your kids away from you. And all that type of stuff. And so that even that too, that mental abuse is very, very unhealthy, especially for a man. And then came to the point where I found myself actually phoning the cops, and the cops told me that I was the problem, that I had to leave, that I could not be around my own house. And it was very frustrating, because being a man and knowing that, somebody that I was with was very small, was smaller than I was. And so just because I didn't have no physical abuse or physical bruises on me, that the police service at that time did not want to engage in the situation. And they just told the man to, why don't you go for a walk? Why don't you go get out of the house, get some fresh air, and then come back, and hopefully, you guys can work things through. And it was almost to the point that it was very, very frustrating, because lot of men. I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one that's been through that. And I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to be the last one that goes through that situation. But it's very challenging and very frustrating for a lot of men, because then they feel like their back is up against the wall and they have to be forced to push back, because then the females are always egging them. Well, come on, hit me then. Hit me then. Why don't you just hit me then? And sooner or later, they end up hitting them and they end up getting charged, and that whole cycle continues. They go into the incarceration, thinking that they're going to get rehabilitated, but they just get in there and they brute. And when they come out, they become more violent and more angry and more revengeful when it comes to whoever put them in those places and those positions. So definitely get more and more men to be more engaged into understanding who they are and educating them more when it comes to the abuses of different types of abuse, and understanding and learning how to say no and learning how to walk away from that when it starts, even like the smallest stages, because those small stages lead up to big stages. And if you can spot those small stages and understand and be able to put a stop to them before they get bigger and bigger. But a lot of people, they don't know how to engage into those meaningful conversations, because a lot of those meaningful conversations are very challenging and very hard for them to do. So if we can learn how to speak and engage into those meaningful conversations, then I think that we're going to be seeing a lot less physical abuse and more meaningful conversations and happening, and a lot of individuals taking those steps that they need to be more successful in their relationship.
Thank you for stepping up and sharing all those things. I heard a lot of great things there. Understanding when you're in a situation, and like you said, the law enforcement, they told you to walk it off and whatnot. They just took the woman's side. So that's hard. Then there's the whole side that you talk about, where sometimes these relationships can happen in cycles. So you said you were in more than one of these types of relationships. So it's like understanding how to look for healthy relationships, to exit ones that aren't, and not to allow society to prevent you from speaking up, from getting that help and support, from speaking up even if everyone's against you, because that's really hard to speak up when society or members of society are pushing you down. I mean, who would want to speak up and say something and have that happen? I have to ask this. In that situation where you did have that happen to you, where you're told to walk off and then maybe things will be better, did you end up having to get some type of support to be able to handle that differently going forward, or to get through that situation? Because I can hear right now, because you're an advocate, you're speaking up to share that story so other people, if they're experiencing this, will do the same. But were you in that same space when this happened to you, or did you reach out to get support?
No, there was actually no supports at all. I was just kind of left up to my own devices to find different solutions in a different path. And so through the many difficult situations, and this is very unfortunate, but I ended up pushing my way out, and I ended up eventually charged for pushing my way out of the house. And I ended up getting arrested, charged, and I was forced away from my home for a year. I was forced away from my child for a year. And there's things that I was homeless, essentially. So I went from having my own, my first ever condo I ended up purchasing, to being homeless overnight, just through the mental and physical abuse that I was experiencing in a relationship, and I was very frustrated and overwhelmed, and I ended up forcing my way out of the relationship by pushing, and unfortunately I ended up being charged and arrested for that, which was very, very challenging at the time. And so I found my my way to my family to seek that support that I needed and to remain away from that relationship.
Can I just say something here real quickly? I'm you know, Christopher, I'm you know, I'm truly sorry for what you have, you know, you've been through. It's very painful. It's just hearing that just breaks my heart. You know, this is one thing that I want to talk about as well. Like, you know, how you said that you've been asked to walk away and you've got no resources or even help and you have to figure it out yourself. I think this is one of the things about, like, we need to train the police force. You know, we need to get them to view domestic violence as criminal and not family matters. You know, it is something that they should take it seriously and be involved irrespective of gender. You know, we need to get them to understand and be aware that abuse knows no gender and it does not discriminate. You know, it can happen to anyone. So their main concern should be on safety, the man and the woman and the children and the family, rather than worrying about not wanting to break families up. You know, they should, you know, it's upholding their duties and perform them accordingly to the law, and not just because, well, you're a man, you're bigger, you know, so, you know, take the better road and just walk away, and then you left all alone, stranded, and figuring out what to do, who to go, you know, who to ask for help, and that's not okay. That's not okay. So we need to really get the you know, local authorities to step up the plate and get some training on this and understand and you know, understand the whole abuse non-gender, you know, gender neutral thing, and look at it as, hey, this is a criminal regardless for whoever calls in, and to actually identify and look at all the scenario and situation, and then to make a you know, a well-informed decision.
I would actually
sure.
like right now to give Anirban an opportunity, as he has been listening in to the conversation going on. What would you add?
Thanks, Linda. It's almost everyone has covered a lot of things. What I would like to add to this is we have been working with these men, from the grassroots level. So every day we have about 10 victims of domestic violence, whether it's back in the home and whether it's back in office. But there are different kinds of violence that is happening against the men. And we were recently working on with the juvenile, boys. So what we found is this is a big area wherein these particular boys are also going through a lot of violence and disrespect, because if you check with the juvenile, the woman here, at least I'm talking about India and also in the African countries, because we are in touch with most of the countries there. So, what is happening is that the females, the daughters, are getting the chance to stay with their mom and are getting a chance to go through studies and other educational aspects. But wherein it's the boys, they're just left aside. So no one takes care and no one is bothered about the boys. So what's happening is in the prison, you are again having more near future men who are going to be into, like some sort of crimes, criminal activities. They may be drug addicts. There may be, people who commit looking forward to suicides because of depression, anxiety. So it's a nexus, a kind of nexus that is being built. And Especially when it's in India, the men are suffering in every way because the rules, the stringent laws that we have favors the woman a lot because even in India, if a husband is not earning and the wife goes on with a alimony maintenance case against him, then even if he is jobless, he is supposedly to pay back that maintenance every month to his wife or maybe for the daughter and son. So that's a pathetic situation. If we check on with the data for the last 3 years, the suicides that happened in India, starting from effective 2019 till 2022, in these span, the suicide rates had doubled. So 1,70,000 plus suicides happened in India, which were by men, and all of these were because of false cases, coming for them. So it's really sad, and it's something that we need to really work on because we need to first understand that it is not the men that we are fighting because we need to first fight for the boys. I myself is a suicide survivor. uh, and I never had anyone to go ahead and, hold my hand and tell me that this is right, this is wrong, you need to do this and stuff. So, and I was into a situation wherein I couldn't share it with my parents, my friends, my cousins, no one. So, being all alone and fighting the situation and coming out of a suicidal tendency and being admitted to the hospital while trying to commit suicide, uh, I can recall back like what's exactly happening to the new generation, the younger generation. So the boys, the moment the boys are born, we need to more check on with the boys because these boys only will grow up to be the men in the near future. So if we want the men to have a proper life away from domestic violence and stuff, the boys in the lower age, that is, when they are in the school, they need to be taught what's a good touch, what's a bad touch, what's a kind of domestic violence. Because domestic violence, whenever we hear about domestic violence, we just think that domestic violence is hitting someone physically, but we are absolutely wrong because you might have bruises if you are being physically beaten up, but that those bruises are taken care of as the time goes on. But when you are mentally attacked, when you go through domestic violence which is mental, that stays on with you till the time you get rid of your life. So that's a pain, a big pain that happens. So we need to understand that there are different things in India. If you check on with India, the daughters go ahead and file false cases against their father, being just because the mother wants them to go ahead and do it so that they get the money out of the father or his property. So we never say that women are not being deprived. Still today we have women are who are being deprived of such, whatever benefits they need to get. But that's because of a group of women throughout the world, they have made it a point that they are going to make it a business of either having I should say, separation from their husbands, so-called husband, because they never call them husbands. They never had that fate. Because if we check on with our mothers and with people of that age, we see that there was love, there was bonding, but everything has come to a whole of, financial aspect as of today. So everyone is bothered about money, and these, percentage of the women, they're misusing the law, they're misusing the freedom, they're misusing the empowerment that we have been talking about for women. They're misusing it, and they're taking on the world to such a place, to such a situation wherein a day would come wherein anyone hearing about a woman would just have profanities in his mouth for the feminine gender, because we are taking up to that level. So we need to work on, and we need more women to come up and check this, because end of the day, it's they have son. There are many mothers who would have a son, and then in the later on they would have this thing happening with their own family as well. So it's a bigger thing that we need to work on, and we really, really need to check on with the boy child, because that's the age, and that's the major problem, because we talking about domestic violence is not going to take care of it. We need to find out the root cause, and the root cause is from the childhood. So we need to start it from the childhood itself. So there are many things to talk about, but I know that time is stipulated and we have many speakers. So if I get a chance to speak again, we'll definitely do so. Thank you so much for the honor.
Thank you. And I think this is also important, Anirban, thank you. I think this is also why it is important that we need to talk about why and how traditional notions of gender norms and stereotypes can be harmful in creating, an environment, not only for the family, but also the communities. It is important that we review concepts and definitions related to sex and gender. It's equally important to invite, and you said it right, we need to invite young children, young people, children, to reflect on all of these realities. We need to talk about challenges and violences and roles that they're going to have to experience and they're going to have to learn every day. So we need to build that spaces based on respect and care, where we can actually be truly be open and address all of these issues. We need to look at traditional gender expectations while reframing all of those positive assets, reconstruct our identity. We're going to have to derive all of our self-worth from what we or they can contribute to social structures like, family, career, societies, and all of that. It's very important. If you guys have the time, do look it up at the Brennan masculinity scale. And then from there, you can address the harmful masculinity with boys, or even like, for women as well. We need to take a look at our, role model and how we want to, we expect on this gender equality, because, to be honest, for me, I don't think there is such thing as gender equality, because there are certain things that I can do that men can't do, and vice versa. So, but I do agree on gender neutral, in some ways. So we need to take a look at all of that. And also, I think, when he was talking about the physical abuse and the emotional trauma and all of that, we need to understand that how, trauma negatively impacts our body and even our brain, and it lingers for a long, long time. And that's why earlier I said it has a serious long life health consequences development. And we're talking about throughout the life cycle here. What all of this can cause, it causes physical and mental health in both direct and indirect ways. It's the mental health. We're talking about increase of anxiety, major depressive disorder, bipolar personality, PTSD, even psychosis. And we're talking about the risk of substance abuse and disorders. We're also talking about behavioral health that's affected. We're talking about ADHD, antisocial, the attention-seeking behavior, attachment disorder, the self-destructive, risky, and delinquency behavior. And I'm very familiar with delinquency behavior. Even we need to be able to identify the psychosomatic complaints and of all of the behavioral changes as well. So there's a lot of issues going on, and yes, it causes there's a lot of effects and impact. The real impact all of this abuse. So we really need to be open about this and really talk about this deeply and address all of those issues. And you're right, we need to look at the root cause of this, and it has to start from young. It has to start from childhood, on how we mothers raise our children and how fathers raise the the children too, regardless, men and boys and girls.
Right.
So,
And if I could,
Absolutely.
if I can chime in on that, part of the question was about healthy femininity. And I think this is probably a good time to introduce that and perhaps try to respond to that. And I think there are a lot of dimensions to healthy femininity. One dimension is that in this day and age, women are told that they are victims of oppression by what's referred to as the patriarchy. Well, first of all, let's be very clear. At least in the United States and in every country I'm familiar with, there is no such thing as a patriarchy. Patriarchy means that a society or a government that's run by men. I'm not aware of any country in the world that you could say it's run by men. Maybe there is, but I'm not aware of any. So, but still this narrative, let's go back to this issue of the narrative. The concept of patriarchal oppression is a widespread narrative that I hear it all the time. And I think that has a negative effect on women because young women start to think, oh, well, hey, I'm a victim simply because I am female. And I think that creates a whole mindset, a mindset of, oh, well, I'm entitled to, additional consideration. I'm entitled to additional advantages. I'm entitled to more rights. You can see where this whole thing is going. I'm entitled to falsely accuse my husband of abuse because this is part of my my effort to so-called topple the patriarchy. So I think I've just touched on this issue. I think there's many other dimensions to it, but I think this narrative of patriarchal oppression, I think it's incredibly harmful especially to young women.
I think we're having a wonderful discussion today, and I hear so many themes that are coming up. So I'm going to say that we're probably going to be coming back together to go into some of the topics in further depth. I do have Charles joining us, and I wanted real quickly for him to introduce himself, just like all of you have in the beginning of the conversation, and to tell us why you're here, a little bit about your background. And yes, if you could go ahead and do that now, Charles, that'd be wonderful.
Charles, can you hear me? Hi, Charles. Hello. I think he has some issues with the.
Okay, then we will come back to Charles. And so what I'd like to do is to jump into our next question. And I think we already touched upon it already, so this will be an easy one to transition into. But how do we best reach out to bring awareness to the general public regarding the issues faced by men and boys, and with the goal of improving the type of support and resources that can be offered? Before we jump into that, I do want to say what I'm hearing is that we've got to start at a younger age, and the messaging needs to be different than the traditional things that men and boys are hearing, as well as the women and girls are hearing. And how do you best do that? I'm thinking that, a lot of times when we're talking about reproductive health, we put the women in one, or the girls on one side of the classroom, and we put the boys on the other. I think there's a place for this type of conversation to also happen that way. But at the same time, I envision after we have those conversations where those private conversations can happen in their own gender, that you bring both the genders together and you find out what misconceptions are there. And then you put the reality about what is and what isn't. And so as you're answering that question, share with me if you think that is a direction we could be taking.
Most absolutely. I think that's a very good thing to actually, rather than having a segregation. I mean, it's 2023. This, it's no longer 1960s or 70s, and we're talking about segregation. And, even during discussions and, seminars and stuff like that, I think it's good to actually have, both genders to sit down in one room, and we laid down on the table and said these are the issues here, so how do we come together and solve this problem for the betterment of our community, for the betterment of our families. And I think one of the best ways to reach out, to bring awareness, is to actually collaborate with diverse organizations, a gender norm, partnering with communities, raising awareness, creating systems and policies, and implementing practice change that is gender neutral centered, in order to improve effectiveness and efficiency and even, equality. I mean, again, equality is so broad, right? So we need to talk about that. So that everybody's heard, all the voices are heard, and then we come to terms, and which is very important. And coming to terms at the end of the day, it's all about humanity, and it's all about the community. What's best for the family? What's best for the community? What's best for the society? Let's work together. One of the ways is like today, what we're having right now. We're having webinar. That's the great thing about having technology, right? I mean, we can reach out to the world now. There's no longer about, okay, we can only do it in this one place, in one country. So use the technology to, positively. So I think that's one of the best way to reach out to bring awareness to the general public. I mean,
Yes, for me, I believe we can bring awareness to the general public by spreading factual and reliable resources, stories that we can share that will make them realize that abuse can happen to men and boys, like like what Christopher did, like like what Anirban shared, that they are, or at circus, that they are a survivor of domestic abuse. So I believe like the more we break that stigma, the more we talk about it, the more men will approach and speak up about their personal experience. I think we can really help our society, and to really um to really spread more awareness that domestic abuse is not a gendered crime. And of course that to speak up again, to speak up that all men needs help. It's not because they're men, they are, they're always like strong. They don't see any, I mean, they don't have any emotions that they cannot ask for help, because what I've noticed, and with my personal experience from this lovely man that I am helping, that he is a survivor of domestic abuse. So I can really relate when Chris is speaking up about his personal experience. It really breaks my heart because I experienced it. I'm still experiencing it, because I can still see the abuse. And to know, to share as well that abuse doesn't stop if you are divorced or if you break up. It's a lot of things going on. Part of the stalking, part of, the gaslighting, or yeah, the manipulation. So yeah, it's another topic. And going back to the question, no, like the more we speak up about it, the mindset the general public will, oh, yeah, I mean, we should check our boys, we check our sons, we check our male friends or relatives, that something, I mean, that domestic abuse can happen to you. By reaching out or talking to them that we are here, that you have, that men have a safe space now, that we can really provide support for them. I believe a lot of men and boys will reach out to us and to our organization. And of course, when we raise awareness, we can really know, and they can really know the signs of help that the boys and men needs us, and we need to step up to protect our boys and men from all this wrong myth that they cannot be victims, they can't, their mental health is always strong. And that's for me. Thank you.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've been dealing with with men for quite a while now, just over 3 years. And one of the biggest situations that we face with our men's program is that there's no funding out there for a men's program. There's no supports out there to help any types of investment into helping men and preventing things from getting worse in society, helping to prevent suicides, helping to prevent domestic violence, helping to increase the capacity with men's programs. And it is very unfortunate that we don't see a lot of funding coming across the table. I know that because I do that with my program, or with our program here with the Men of the North. And most of the funding that I see is directed towards women, children, elders, and families. And there's nothing really too distinctive that's just guided towards men and helping them. And I think that's where we're not seeing a lot of programs, where we're not seeing a lot of support, is because there isn't funding out there for men's programs. And it's a really unfortunate circumstance. I know that when I reach out to mental health supports throughout Saskatchewan, and a lot of the upper managements are all it's all female orientated business. And to me, when I reach out to them, the first sentence that comes out of them is this both a female and male program? And being a male program, I tell them, I says, no, it's I'm trying to encourage and to increase the men's integrity, and helping them to understand and gain more respect for them, so they can be more respectful to their spouses, to their families, and as well as their community. And 9 times out of 10, they just, okay, well, thanks for your time, and never to be seen or heard of again. So it's definitely one of the issues that I've been facing in dealing with this men's program, is that there is not a lot of funding, not a lot of supports out there, and not a lot of people willing to take the time to invest into a program that's distinct and orientated for the male gender, to help them to gain more self-respect, and helping them to increase their integrity.
Chris, you are absolutely right on that one. I know that for sure. There's always lack of funding, or almost none funding to help men. It's really sad and unfortunate that there's more funding to actually build prisons and incarcerate men than to actually have funding to help and support that actually has a lot of resources for men. So therefore, we need to look into equal support and resources, and allocate those fundings for men as well, because it costs a lot of money to just build prisons and keep them in there and then treat them like criminals, rather than looking at it that, hey, this is we could actually spend in a better way to fund mental health for men, and support for men, and giving up a lot of resources for men. So in that way, we will have less juvenile delinquencies, we will have less male in prison, because children, especially boys, they need men to be their role model. And a lot of men, good men, who just end up in the wrong place and wrong time, just not being treated fairly, ended up in prison. Who's going to step up the plate and to be men for these boys?
I'd like to say a few words about indigenous men. And I have a particular interest in indigenous men. I previously lived in New Mexico, and I worked extensively with both the Navajo and with the Pueblo Indian tribes, and also to some extent with the urban Indians in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So in the last few years, there's emerged a new movement called Missing and Murdered Indian Women. The irony, of course, is that there are more murdered Indian men than murdered Indian women. The actual numbers are 75% Indian male victims of homicide, 25%. If you look at missing Indian persons, there are more males Indians than females who go missing. And anyway, so we have been particularly concerned about this extreme bias in this movement, again, called Missing and Murdered Indian Women. So we've actually issued a number of press releases. We did one just 2 weeks ago about, and it was titled something to the effect of the MMIW movement needs to tell the truth about missing and murdered Indian men. And we actually got a very positive response from one of the missing and murdered Indian person movement in Washington State. So that's one example of how we've been able to publicize the issue is through the use of press releases.
Great. I would also like to add this, thanks, Christopher, for bringing out this truth about funding, and thanks, Doctor, Charles and Edward as well, Zenny. Yes, funding is definitely one big issue, and we need to also understand, corporates. We need a lot of involvement from the corporates because women, they have, as we term them, that women have made themselves to come up to a stage wherein they are sellable. Even the companies, companies that manufacture women products, or as such the other corporate offices, they know that if they have a woman or they support the woman, they would have a lot of power. They would have a lot of praises from the society and stuff, and they can earn a lot of revenue as well. But when it comes to men, men have never been able to sell themselves. So you don't find much clothes for the men, but when you go down to a store, you find a lot of, lot of collections for the woman. So whether it's jewelry, whether it's clothes, whether it's shoes, whether it's accessories, so a lot, a lot. So there is very less for the men. And we need to also understand, why the funding is less, because the corporates have never been taught or spoken about, why they need to support the causes for men. So from our organization, we tried in getting in touch with a few of the corporates, and with God's grace, it started working us for well, because we make them understand with some study and R&D that why the men needs to be given preferences, given advantages, and there should be funding on programs for the men, because in an organization we prove them that if supposedly we have 50% of females and 50% of them are males, now out of these 50% of the males in today's world, at least 50% of them, that's 25% of the males, are going through domestic violence or some kind of violence back home or in the family. So directly or indirectly, the person who is going through a kind of violence is coming down to the office, and the corporate, the office is getting an hit, either in terms of production or either in terms of quality, because these people are not going to go ahead and be able to deliver what they should. So end of the day, who is suffering? The corporate, the offices. So once we talked about the data and we made it possible to make them understand that why these programs need to be supported. So, out of 10, we had 3 of them who came up and said that, yes, we would like to go ahead and support this movement and have different programs being organized at our office. So, the numbers might be very less, like it's 3 out of 10. However, there is always a ray of light. So there is always a hope because we have 3 of them who understand that these things needs to be supported. So yes, it's a big issue that we need to have funding, and funding can only happen if we have more of the corporates being involved, and the corporates need to be taught that why these funding needs to happen, because end of the day it would be their production, their business which is going to get hampered if a man is not taken care of, is not attended, is not given importance, if he is going through some kind of violence or maybe domestic violence.
I read a report. It was about a month ago, and they say the way that the academics with the male dropout rates, they say by 2068, they say we're going to be seeing our last young man graduating from university.
Absolutely, Christopher. And if you check on with the data as well, worldwide, it stays, because you cannot say that men are being going through domestic violence just because of their wives. Because a boy who has got a separated parents back home, or who have parents who are having a fight on a daily basis, will never grow up into a proper good society wherein he would have that urge to study and give his best. So he would definitely either fall into an anxiety attack, or maybe depression, or maybe suicidal, or substance abuse, or into criminal activities. So you can never expect them to grow up to be a proper man. So these are issues that needs to be tended back home as well. And you cannot just blame the wives, because a wife who is becoming or getting into domestic violence act is maybe most of them. A study says by SMAM, it tells that worldwide these women who are getting into domestic violence, specifically with the Asian countries and with the African countries and with the some parts of Europe and US as well, Australia being on a larger number, is just because these women, as we talked about earlier, that their upbringing, like there is a myth which is being in the society that a girl has to be like this, she has to do this and that. And specifically when women, these girls are back home, they see their mom or their mother having the same kind of behavioral differences towards their father. So from the childhood itself, these girls keep in mind that, okay, once I get married, boys needs to be treated like this only, because I see my mom doing it with my father, I see my sister doing it with my brother or her husband, so I see my cousin doing it with her husband maybe. So the moment she's growing up, she's getting these things, uh, you know, all together in her mind. It accumulates in her mind, and once she is married, she is maybe she is not doing it deliberately, but the instances, the way she has been brought up, the situation that has created in all these world, maybe in her school, maybe in her college. Because if you see in the school as well, if you have a teacher who is preferring the female students, the female student would have a feeling in mind that we female are always on the top, so the boys needs to be always below us. So these are things that needs to be worked out, and you cannot just blame a wife that she turned out to be a perpetrator just because she married this person. We need to understand that there are different issues that makes this wife turn into a perpetrator, which is not related to the husband at all, but maybe back home, the way her mom has been behaving with her dad, or maybe her sisters on XY have been behaving with their partners. So that's a big issue as well.
Thank you, Anirban. Unfortunately, we were running out of time, so we need to move on. I'm going to jump to the next question, which is, in your opinion, what social programs are most effective in addressing violence against men and boys? So just before you get into it, I guess there was some sort of a bit of an overlap, which was mentioned before, that there are lots of programs and incentives out there for women and girls to get ahead in life. And I'm all for that. I think that's fantastic. But where are the similar programs to men and boys? So we definitely have an issue there. So the floor is open to the panel. Keep in mind that we are running out of time. We do appreciate all your contributions. It's just that time is short. So please go ahead.
I just find out this one, an organization is called A Call to Men. And it's an organization dedicated to preventing violence by promoting positive manhood. And they have an excellent layout on their framework for healthy masculinity. So if you have the time, reach out, Google it, A Call to Men. And it's really sad, because when you Google and you try to find all of these programs and organizations and that actually caters more towards men and boys, you don't see a lot, but you see a lot for women, unfortunately. Yeah. But yes, I did find a few, which is actually one of them, which is specifically on, against, violence against men and boys, which is A Call to Men. So do check it out and reach out to them.
Excellent.
I think the country that's actually had the most success or made the most progress in this area is England. In England, on November the 3rd, they had a whole day devoted to domestic abuse against men and boys. And it was organized by a group called the Mankind Initiative. They actually had 43 different organizations participating in this. And some of the organizations were police departments, were the county councils in different parts of England, social service agencies. So it was really refreshing and exciting to see how well they put together this event last November.
Okay, thank you very much, Christopher. I'm sorry, but because of time constraints, I'm going to rush right into my apologies, by the way. The last question on today's broadcast, which is, what legislative changes would you like to see implemented at this time?
Father Engagement Act is that we need to see more fathers stepping up to the plate and building positive, healthy role models. I would like to definitely see a Father Engagement Act being implemented as a bill, a legislation bill.
Yeah, same. Equal policies for men and women, and that leaving marital house, escape abuse is not abandoning. So that's really, I really want to implement in the legislative area.
I'm sorry, Zenly, could you repeat that?
Oh, yeah, the implement, is that the question, right? The last question. For me, like what Chris said, equal policies for men and women,
Okay.
and that leaving marital house to escape abuse is not abandoning, and that men can really get help from the abuse, and from the family court, the custody, and to all the fathers that alienated.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's again, I said it earlier, but I'm going to repeat it again. It's the equal support and resources and the allocation of fundings for men and boys, and of course further organization association would be excellent, because yes, we need to have more men to be role model to young boys. And another thing that I would like to see is to actually have more training on the police force, because as I said, that they need to be aware and understand that abuse knows no gender, and that it's not, their concern should not be about not trying to break up a family or anything like that, but it should be on upholding their duties and perform them accordingly to the law with justice. So to get them to understand and view domestic violence as a criminal and not family matters.
Thank you, Suri. Before I pass you on to Linda for the closing remarks, does anybody on the panel have any message for the United Nations?
Yes, we do. So Davia has taken a very strong stance at the United Nations. If you go to our website, you'll see we've put out multiple press releases to the United Nations. I have to say the United Nations has fallen into what I would call a Marxist gender model, which is extraordinarily exclusionary. So the message to the United Nations is you need to drop the Marxist ideology that says that the family is oppressive to women and that men are, that the patriarchy is oppressive. That's just the narrative that needs to be dropped.
Linda?
I'm going to move to the announcements before we have each of our panelists share their parting words, and they'll be sharing with us their organization's name and how they can be contacted, so that anyone listening to this broadcast can jump into the efforts that they're leading. And so with that, I will be sharing that we have a few live shows. One of them is Open Up, where we have individuals share their personal journeys. It's a live talk show. It happens on Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Tamil Live Talk Show on Sundays at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a podcast. All of our shows are available on 6 platforms, including iPhone, Google Play, and so on. We have a monthly men's group meeting, and it's for men by men. And it happens the second Tuesday of every month from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. through Zoom. That's Eastern Standard Time. There are also no limitations to gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups. All walks of life can participate in any of our shows. If you want to be a guest on any of our shows or are willing to be a part of our organization and help us directly or indirectly, please reach out to us. We love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, associations, corporations, government officials, and businesses. Our phone number is 437-889-8329. Our email address is info@voiceofmen360.org, or our website at www.voiceofmen360.org. You can also find us on all social media. We have a Facebook group page. We have you joining our groups so you can see our daily activities. Please invite your friends as well. And here I have that we are running a special campaign whereby November 19th for International Men's Day, we want to have 5,000 members. So please invite your friends to join our Facebook group, Voice of Men 360. Other social media platforms are Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Voice of Men 360. We want to reach out to as many people as possible, and we want to continue to provide this support, and we can't do that with all of you. And so with that, we'll move to our parting words of wisdom from our panelists today. It's been a great pleasure to go into this conversation. I can see that we're just In the beginning stages, there's much more depth that we each can bring. And so I'm looking forward to the future discussions. And so with that, jump right in.
All right. So I'm just going to say real quickly that, my parting part here is that humanity has no caste, color, or creed. Health, especially mental health, has no color, gender, whether biological or preferred. It takes a village to raise a child. And therefore, we need to share in the support of raising our children and healing of our family and communities, regardless of nationality, race, language, or even faith. We are all partners on this planet, and we are responsible for one another. So let's do it together. And
Awesome.
Sorry, if you need to get hold of me, my email is suricharles25@gmail.com. Just send me an email and I will reply. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me here, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and my knowledge. Thank you.
Awesome. Christopher Merasty, thank you for having me. It was such an honor to be part of this wonderful discussion. The Men of the North is a mental health support program and an outreach initiative that welcomes all men, regardless of your religion, ethnic background, or socioeconomic status. Our mission is to provide an opportunity that helps to encourage men to seek lasting, positive mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. We wish to foster an environment that promotes health, recovery, and rehabilitation. Our vision is realizing the full potential of all men working together to leave a lasting legacy for healthier families and stronger communities. We can be reached at menofthenorth.net. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Suri and Christopher. I'm Zenly Diansuy, Men Courage Philippines. And yes, thank you again for having me. It really gave me so much hope and motivation just by joining this discussion and just being, sharing my experiences and knowing that there are people out there also fighting for men's rights and men's mental health. And my message to all the Filipino boys and men out there who can watch this, and to all the boys and men out there, that we are here. Help is everywhere. You matter, and you're not alone. And for the people who wants to reach out to me, you can search and Mencourage Philippines in Twitter and Facebook, and at my email mencourageph@gmail.com. And if you want to have to talk to me, just call me on my number, my personal number, or I will use it as the hotline now here in the Philippines is +63 928 859 4304. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank IDEVAMB for inviting the Domestic Abuse and Violence International Alliance to join this call. It's been a terrific discussion. It's been a great exchange. Thank you to everybody for sharing your personal stories and your wonderful efforts all around the world. We have found that many organizations feel somewhat isolated, and that's why we have seen such a rapid growth in our membership. We're now up to 70 members in 25 countries. If your group would like to join the Domestic Abuse and Violence International Alliance, send me an email at davia, DAVIA, at end2dv.org. Again, davia at end2dv.org. Thank you very much.
Anirban, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Shivam, for giving an opportunity, and thanks, Voice of Men 360. You have been working a lot for this particular cause. Thank you so much. And our organization, All Bengal Men's Forum, if anyone would like to get in touch with us, you can just go ahead on Facebook. We have a page, we have a group, All Bengal Men's Forum, and you can also have go connect with us on website. It's www.allbengalmensforum.org. So you can get in touch with us, and we would love to be connected. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for being here on this particular discussion.
Thank you very much. Before I pass it back to Linda, I would like to thank everyone for your wonderful and invaluable contribution to today's broadcast. And I'd like to reiterate one thing quickly that was mentioned in the beginning of the program, and that is we should be, our fight, our drive should be seen as a humanitarian issue and not just a gender issue. So I think that's a very important distinction. Thank you, and I give you back to Linda.
Thank you. Today has been an excellent day of coming together to really talk about the work that's being done for men and boys, and then having that honest discussion that there's still more that we can do. And I can see that there's going to be some social programs that each one of us can go out there and champion, and we can invite other people to join us. And what I would encourage and invite everyone to do is to also encourage them, if they see a need, don't wait for someone to be offering it, but to step forward and take those actions, because with one person at a time can make a huge difference. And sometimes that biggest difference is being able to speak up when you've experienced something and educating somebody on what can happen, rather than waiting for a group to come out to lead the way and hold your hand, but to really just express that. Because with one person sharing their story, like Christopher did today, I mean, that was empowering just for our group. And we need more people like him that will step forward. And you don't have to be that leader that's the head of an organization to do that. You can be someone that may even be 12 years old that speaks up and says those things. And that's really what I want to share, is that we inspire our youth, and that we start with education. And we do that starting at home, and we spread that to everywhere in our communities. So thank you very much for being a part of this conversation so that these messages could be heard today.